Josef Fritzl is the true definition of a monster, a man that keeps his own daughter in an unmade dungeon just 20 feet below their family home, and raped her for 24 years. Warning: this episode talks about domestic violence, rape, imprisonment, and incest. Josef Fritzl was born on April 9, 1935, in Austria. He was raised by his mother, Maria Fritzl. He further said that he suffered physical and verbal abuse from his mother. In 1955, he married Rosemary. He was 21 and she was 17. They had 2 sons and 5 daughters. In 1959, Maria Fritzl moved in with Josef and Rosemary. He later admitted that he locked his mother in the basement and told the neighbors that his mother had died and kept her locked up until her death in 1980. In 1967, he followed a woman, broke into her home, and raped her while holding a knife against her throat. Josef was arrested and served 12 months of an 18-month sentence. He was a suspect in a case of attempted rape of a 21-year-old woman and was known for indecent exposure. According to Austrian law, his criminal record was erased after 15 years. Elisabeth Fritzl was born on April 6, 1966. Josef was controlling, abusive, and began sexually abusing her when she was only 11 years old. It is not known if he did the same with his other children. At the age of 15, she started a waitressing course. In January 1983, she ran away from home and went to Vienna with a friend. Her parents contacted the police about her disappearance, and she was found by the police 3 weeks later. In August of 1984, when Rosemary was not home, Josef asked Elizabeth to help him carry a door to the basement. After they put the door in place, he forced Elizabeth inside and knocked her unconscious with a ether-soaked towel. In the early 80s, Josef built an atomic bomb shelter. After the Cold War, it was normal to build these shelters in Austria. This was the official story, but in reality, he was building an underground house where he planned to lock up his daughter Elizabeth. The basement was hidden behind shelves in a workshop. To get to Elizabeth, he had to go through 8 doors, of which 2 were protected by electronic locks, which can only be opened by using a code. After Elizabeth's disappearance, Josef and Rosemary contact the police. A month later, Josef hands the police a letter written by Elizabeth, the first of several that he forced her to write. The letter stated that Elizabeth was tired of living with her family and was staying with a friend, and if they looked for her, she would leave the country. Josef told the police that she had joined a cult, and eventually the police stopped investigating Elizabeth's disappearance. Josef visited Elizabeth almost every day and at least 3 times a week to bring food and clothes. 2 years later, he began sexually assaulting her, and she had 7 children while in prison. 1 child died soon after birth, Michael. Josef took 3 children, Lisa, Monica, and Alexander, out of their cell when they were still babies, and with the approval of the social service authorities, they started living at home in the care of Rosemary and Joseph. Joseph would place the children near the house, and each child was wrapped carefully and had a note written by Elizabeth, claiming that she could not care for the baby. Joseph would place the children in bushes near the house or outside the house. Each child was wrapped carefully and had a note written by Elizabeth, claiming that she could not care for the baby and was leaving the baby with Rosemary and Joseph to keep it safe. After the birth of their fourth child in 1994, Joseph allowed the sale to be extended and sent Elizabeth and her children, Kirsten, Stefan, and Phoenix, to dig the soil with their bare hands. Elizabeth tried to teach them with the limited education she had and provide them with the most normal childhood she could given the circumstances. Sometimes Joseph would turn out the lights or not to bring food for days to punish them. Joseph told Elizabeth, Kirsten, Stefan, and Phoenix that they would be killed with gas if they tried to escape, and that if they touched the door, they would die by electric shock, preventing them from trying to escape. According to his sister-in-law, Christine, he went down to the basement every morning at 9 a.m., apparently to work on plans for the machines he sold to companies, and even stay there at night. A man rented a room on the first floor of the house for 12 years and claimed to have heard noises coming from the basement, which Joseph explained were coming from faulty pipes or the gas heating system. In 2008, Elizabeth begged her father to take her daughter, Kirsten, who was 19 years old, to the hospital because she was very sick, and Joseph agreed to take her to the hospital. He took Kirsten out of her cell and called an ambulance, claiming that he had a note from Elizabeth explaining Kirsten's condition. When they arrive at the hospital, Kirsten is put into the intensive care unit. She suffers from kidney and lung failure. The doctors don't recognize her symptoms and suspect a genetic disease. When they arrive at the hospital, Kirsten is put into the intensive care unit. She suffers from kidney and lung failure. The doctors don't recognize her symptoms and suspect a genetic disease. To be sure, the doctors looked up her medical history in the national database, but didn't find anything. To find out more, they turn to Joseph, and he says he is her grandfather, but doesn't tell much more. Given the unusual situation, the doctors contact the police. He tells the police that Kirsten is Elizabeth's daughter and that he found Kirsten in front of his door with a message from Elizabeth. The message said that Kirsten was sick and asked them to take care of her. 2 days after Kirsten arrived at the hospital, the doctors and police appealed through the media for Elizabeth to come forward and provide information about Kirsten's medical history. The media coverage pays off, and 5 days later, the doctors receive a visit from Joseph and Elizabeth. Elizabeth visits her daughter but gives no information to the doctors. The doctors call the police, and Elizabeth and Joseph are taken away by the police for questioning. Elizabeth tells the police that she has never been in a cult and that her father locked her in a cell for 24 years. She told that her father sexually assaulted her and had 7 children. Josef has been accused of rape, incest, kidnapping, imprisonment, enslavement, murder of Michael. He pleads guilty to all charges except for Michael's death. In March 2009, Josef was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rosemary said that she didn't know, and Josef confirmed her story. Currently, Elizabeth lives under false identity and the house is under constant surveillance. Is everything that I have for this case. You can find in the show notes the links to domestic violence prevention and help